it's amazing to be able to see that today you have so many people entering the fray and saying, I want to contribute.
I like Harford because he's very charismatic. And when he stands up to speak, he has presence and he gives a sense of hope. You're so used to elections in Singapore where everything is so calculated. Every word is so controlled and contained and rehearsed. And he delivers it with a lot more charisma. And there's a bit of spontaneity about the way he delivers, which is nice.
Arifin from SDP. My goodness, he's
Maturity.
Amazing.
Maturity.
The charisma you talk about. Harpreet is 59. This boy is 27.
27.
And it's really amazing. Dr. Syed Harun from PAP. I have no doubts he'll be a minister one day. If the PAP is still government in 5-10 years, and they will. So I have no doubts.
Jackson Au from the Workers' Party. He's very young. But what I found him to be, he's articulate about the issues. Not perfect, of course, but he knows what's happening on the ground. And he has put himself out there to take all the pain of politics and try to make a difference. So I respect that.
I'm very impressed with Marshall Lim from the PAP. You know, even though the chances of him winning Hougang are very, very slim, but valiant. Hello, welcome. My panelists, first, the lady, Uma Rad Chia.
Thank you for getting my name right.
Yeah. Well, tell us what Red Dot Matters does.
Okay, Red Dot Matters is this newsletter that I put together. And the idea is I don't talk about it from a partisan local politics, but I talk about it from policies. And I want to tell the story of Singapore that has yet to be told, how we can make this country better together.
So it's a kind of narrative.
It's a
That you're
narrative,
building.
yeah.
And you're co-creating that narrative with input from people.
Yes, I am, totally.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you write delightfully. I love
you.
reading. And all of you should read what she puts out there. Okay. This guy is the hero. He claims he's a professor. But look at him. Does he look like a professor? No. He looks like a student disguised as a professor. Okay. But he is. I'm told seriously, he is an associate professor. He does teach, and I'm told fairly well. Okay. So his name is Walid Jumblad. He hails from the Nanyang Technological University.
Yes.
And you are you specialize, among other things, in electoral politics.
Yes.
Right? And anything else?
Yeah, Southeast Asian politics in general.
Okay. And Singapore as well.
Yes.
Right? Specifically.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you. And last but certainly not least is Ng Kian Boon. Now, Kian Boon, in your past life, you were making a lot of money, I'm told.
I wish. No. I was in oil and gas. Yeah.
You were in oil and gas. In Malay, we say orang minyak. Oily man.
Yeah, that is the reputation, yes.
Yeah. Very slimy, oily. But you were a trader, right?
I was in a trading organization, yeah. So I spent 10 years with the company and doing different things in the oil and gas value chain.
Yeah,
I got oily across the 10-year period. Yeah.
And you gave that all up to go into your podcast live.
Yeah, that's correct. So I wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
So somebody told me that I couldn't do something like YouTube or marketing. So I decided to just give it a try. So for the past 2 months, things kind of started to grow. So I'm going to continue to do this. Yeah.
I think you're doing an excellent job.
Yeah.
Kian Boon, and we do need people also to come in and crunch some numbers and make sense of the numbers. And what I like about your style is you demystify the numbers, and keep doing it. And your site is called Red Dot Perspective.
That's correct.
Why not Perspectives?
Actually, I regret it. So many people refer to it as a Red Dot Perspectives, including, I think, Yalabat, right? One of my friends there actually said it the exact same way. So I said I regret it, but too late. Just keep it what it is. I think what's important is the substance, not really the form. So even you see some of the content that I do, you can see that the production level is not really there. But what I try to focus on is the content and getting it out on a timely basis. So that's the focus.
But what I find admirable is, young people like you really going out there and doing your part. It never occurred to me that this day will come.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited about it. because when I started work in this space, that was in 1984, when I started work, it was such a different Singapore. We had to really fight battles to have the license to go out there and interview people, to talk to people. When we do the street interviews with people will literally run away. There was one occasion when I stopped in front of this man and I said, "Look, can you tell me this? What's your view on this?" And in perfect English, he said, "I don't speak English." People were terrified, But then in the 90s, early 90s, things started to change. People actually walked up to us, and said, "I want to make a comment." And some of them would make a comment about very senior people like Lee Hsien Loong. And I would caution them, "Are you aware that this is going to go on TV?" They said, "Yes." So that change started in the 1990s, but I still didn't think that there will come a time when so many young people, who are often labeled as apathetic, young people stepping forward, and not in a frivolous manner, but with deep conviction, without being stodgy like me. Okay. Now, let's kick off today's discussion. Let me ask the number cruncher. Give us a sense of how many seats we need. We have got 97 seats to be contested. How many seats does the opposition or the alternative parties need to get to deny the ruling party a 2/3 supermajority?
I mean, to your point, the total number of seats available is 97.
Yeah.
So to deny them a supermajority, you need 33.
One of the hotly fought seats for me is Tampines GRC, that is led by Minister Masagos Zulkifli of the PAP. He's been in Tampines for some time, and it's a four-cornered fight. We've got Workers' Party's Faisal Manap, and it's the first time, I'm not racializing him, but the first time that you're having two ethnic Malay leaders contesting head-to-head, right? Now, therefore, there's a probability that the Malay issue could come up, or Malay-related issues could surface. And then the other two parties are PPP, led by Goh Meng Seng, who's the leader of the party, and NSP. Maybe we can start with you, Walid. What's your sense? Do you feel that Tampines is a hotbed?
Yeah, so I'm a Tampines resident as well.
Oh.
So I do think that Tampines is will be the most hotly contested seat, other than perhaps Bukit Panjang, SMC. But amongst the GRCs, I think Tampines has, even before nomination day, it wasn't talked about as one of the more hotly contested ones, but I thought it would be. By the way, it's not the first time that two Malays have led GRC. So Yaakob Ibrahim and I believe Rahizan from WP in 2011.
Oh.
So perhaps that was the first time.
Okay.
But you are right that this has a different ring to it, because Faisal is an existing member of parliament, and Faisal has gone head to head with Masagos on many Muslim issues in parliament. And I think a lot of Muslims will remember that. But it's only 25% of the population in Tampines. It's still the highest in Singapore.
Highest in any constituency,
proportion.
GRC.
Yeah. So 25% of Malays, 25% are Malays, and I think that could be the make or break. But generally also the mood, I think there is a lot of unhappiness about cost of living and so on. So I would say that just looking at things as they are, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Workers' Party wins Tampines. And I was there at the Tampines rally when Faisal Manap was introduced. The crowd went wild. Faisal Manap is not exactly one who gives good speeches or he's
That's
good on the ground.
strength.
That's not his strength. But I saw a level of warmth to him that, and I've been attending rallies since for many years. I didn't see that towards him specifically. So maybe there's something there.
What I'm curious about, Walid, is this, right? You said they're just 25% of the GRC's population. And therefore, it may not, you said they're just 25%. And their concerns quite often are generic concerns of everybody else, like cost of living.
Yeah.
So what is so special about this constituency?
Yeah.
Why do you feel that it's probably going to be really a hot battle?
I think
When it's a four-cornered fight, usually the four-cornered fight is very advantageous to the incumbent.
Yeah. So for a couple of issues there. One is I don't think those two other parties will matter at all. I think if there's a clearly stronger opposition party, the opposition votes will go to that one candidate. So those two I don't think will feature at all. So second, why specifically this? Well, generally I think there are stronger ministers and there are weaker ministers. I think this GRC is helmed by one of the weaker ministers in the perceptions of people, rightly or wrongly, but I think that is a perception. And secondly, don't forget that Gaza and Palestine is still rings in the minds and hearts of a lot of Malays and Muslims, also young voters, but young Muslims especially. And you also see that it's of course it's not a Muslim issue, it's a humanitarian issue, but Muslims feel passionately about it. And Masagos was also involved with the Kelvin Cheng incident, and I think there will be some backlash that will be felt at the ballot box. Whether it's enough to turn the elections is a different matter, but I think on election day I'll be watching for Tampines the most.
What about you, Kianbon? What do you think is the number one hot seat?
Actually, just some comments on Tampines. I think normally speaking, if you have a multi-corner fight, then the people who are more towards the opposition will vote for the strongest party, in this case the Workers' Party. But I think in this case in Tampines, if the fight is going to be close, it's going to be like 50-50, for example, right? Then you're going to see some of these smaller parties taking away some of the votes. It may be a couple of percentages, which would matter a lot, I think. And I think more importantly, you see some of the actions by the People's Power Party. I think Mr. Ng Chee Meng, who is the Secretary General, he's going all out there into the mainstream media, even on social media, trying to sell that story that the Workers' Party did not do well in certain aspects of this election, like allowing, and I use the word loosely, right, Marine Parade to be a walkover, talking about how the Workers' Party is worse than the PAP. So some of this messaging would then go up to the voters and take away some of those small little percentages. And I think those will play a role in Tampines.
And how many percent do you think that, I mean, I call it spot votes. Although technically they're not. They're spot votes because it's not a considered vote. It's just impulsive.
But
how many percent?
in my mind, single digits, low single digits.
Okay.
But normally it wouldn't matter. But I think in this case in Tampines, it might. Just given the fact that the whole situation in Tampines is a bit more complicated. There's so many issues that Walid talked about. So there's a lot of things to consider. And then, people are not always aware of the ins and outs of what happened. So they'll just vote based on certain moments of differentiation and make a snap decision. Yeah, so
I don't know. We have had two things. I don't think voters are always that impulsive. I think Singaporean voters have shown that they are quite considered. They will vote for the party and the candidate, which is why even within the PAP, the better candidates get higher vote shares, even within the opposition as well. So I wouldn't be so dismissive of Singaporean voters and their ability. You said wasn't considered. I think Singaporean voters generally are considered. Secondly, we have had a four-cornered fight in recent history. Punggol East by-election. The Workers' Party won that one, and rather convincingly as well. The percentages for Reform and SDA was 1.2 and 0.7%.
Yeah.
That's pretty embarrassing. But I take your point. If it's 49, then 2% matters. Yeah.
So Umar, you specialize very much in youth, the youth sentiments and how they express themselves.
Gen Z, yeah.
Gen Z in particular, not even the millennials, Gen Z, right? So in this particular case, there are quite a significant number of young people in Tampines. How do you think the young people will exercise their votes in a situation like this, where there is a cultural, racial, religious dimension to it as well?
With the young people, I think a lot of them are looking at social media and what's important at a global level. So I really do think that the Palestinian issues would come to count because they see it as a humanitarian issue, right? And to them, standing on the side of a social cause is greater than actually understanding, who is the face representing Parliament and the different parties where I am at. I don't think they're really, if you remember, we were talking about mothership, right? When they went around and asked everybody, do you recognize this person? And they kind of know it's a prime minister, but or they don't even know the name of half these people. But they do watch enough social media to understand humanitarian issues that are going on. So they're passionate about these issues. Causes, yeah. And they would vote for these causes versus vote for the individual.
Do you think so?
I think that's part of it. But if I were the PAP Tampines team, after hearing Omar, I'll be a bit worried.
Why?
Because if they are voting on causes, they would think that what the government has done is probably not enough. Right? Actually, if you had asked me about the government's response to Palestine, I think it has been pretty good. Given the circumstances.
The practical
circumstances, right?
Because
so
you're sending a lot
cannot
of...
do as a small country, right? So if you had asked me in February, I would say it wouldn't have mattered in the election. But then the Kelvin Cheng incident happened. I think it brought it up back into the consciousness of people. Yeah. So that's why I think it will have a role, especially in places like Tampines.
Yeah, and the Kelvin Cheng incident, or what he said, actually has affected a lot of young people.
Yes.
Who are not even involved in this.
Yeah.
It's just a sense of right versus wrong. And that's the point you're making, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not so much about the logic of it.
No.
Young people don't vote on logic.
Yeah.
I think it's about the emotion of that time and what feels. Justice is not just about logic. Yeah. Sometimes it's about how you feel. It's your emotion as well.
I don't think it's that they don't use logic. It's that it's not that important.
Yeah.
By itself. It's in the context that's important. Let's move on to the next one. This is in my view a very hot seat, right? Jalan Kayu. Right. Now, we all know that Labour Chief Ng Chee Meng is there in this single member constituency. And against him is Andre Loh, who is 33 years old, very young man, very articulate. Right? Now, but it's not just the two of them contesting, right? The NTUC Income's former NTUC Enterprise, former CEO, Swee Che, he has written an open letter. He has posted it. Now, it's quite damning, right, of Ng Chee Meng. And yesterday, Ng Chee Meng gave a response at the rally. What's your sense of Ng Chee Meng's response at the rally, Ken Boon?
If you ask me, right, if I wasn't so in touch with the politics now and reading it up, right, I think the first thing I would feel as a voter is I'm very confused. Because if I look at some of the big events that have happened around this event, before the elections happened, people are already talking about Mr. Ng Chee Meng and the Alliance NTUC Income. They call it saga, right?
Yeah.
So people are already talking about it. And no one has managed the narrative on that at that point in time. So weeks gone by, months gone by. Well, it's been a year plus already, right?
It's almost like it's hanging loose.
Yeah. So no one has managed what is the right story to tell voters or residents or Singaporeans in general. So as elections came, then what you see is that you have different people coming out to speak about it. So SM Lee came out and said that it is not Mr. Ng's fault that this happened. And he even went on to say that if the Workers' Party were to be the ruling party, they would have done the same thing. Right or wrong, I know. I won't talk too much about that. Then on the next day, I think this morning, you see Mr. Ng coming out and say that he apologizes for it. So if I'm an average voter, right, the first question I'll ask is, so did you or do you not do wrong?
Why are you apologizing?
Yeah, I am so confused now because the big boss says that you did no wrong. You said you did wrong. So as a voter, how am I supposed to feel? So I think the messaging there needs to be calibrated and at least coordinated. Or else voters get very confused. And when people get confused, there's uncertainty, they will look for the alternative. So I think that's one force that is going to play out in this election in Jalan Kayu.
Thank you. Walid?
Yes, and I think absolutely what you just said. Just to add on, Ng Chee Meng has lost an election before, so voters have rejected him before. Not that necessarily you're going to lose the next one, but he was the anchor minister for that GRC 2020 Sengkang. And I always try to look at the tea leaves, right? What the candidates themselves are feeling. And Pritam in his Tampines rally, Pritam saying close the night for the Workers' Party. He spent most of it on Ng Chee Meng.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what is it? Before that, I didn't even I thought there was an outside chance for Jalan Kayu. After attending that rally, then I'm thinking, if Pritam thinks this is something worth pursuing, then I think he's won more elections than four of us combined, right? So he knows, probably he smells something that the rest of us don't. So I think Jalan Kayu is very much, you're right, is very much in play.
Do you think Andre Lo's age will work in his favor or against him? He's 33 years old.
I've interviewed Andre actually on my show, and I found him such a compelling candidate. Age, I personally don't care
Why
about.
did you find him compelling?
Okay, so he was very articulate. He knows what he wants, and very genuine as well. I think it's not that the ruling party. I think Umar is the best person to ask about this. It's not that the PAP candidates they don't have personality, right? Individually, I'm sure they have personality, but somehow they feel like they're hamstrung or they cannot show this. And you don't see as much of this in the opposition candidates where they're allowed to be themselves a bit more. So I found that of him. And I always feel if you're good enough, you're old enough, right? And or you're young enough. So if you're healthy enough, I don't care whether you're 84, you can run. And likewise, if you're good enough, 33 doesn't matter. We've had younger people get
I've been told
as
quite
well.
often that
I'm not sure whether that's
I act
true.
like a 10-year-old. You know.
10-year-old maybe.
That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing.
Uma, what's your take?
I think
young
it's-
people.
I
mean,
think
his age, is it?
I
gonna
don't
work?
think his age is going to be a problem. Honestly, if you look around the world and you look at Scandinavian countries, and some of these people I'm talking about are my friends. The Prime Minister of Iceland, she's in her early 40s.
In Sweden.
In Sweden as well. Finland. I mean, look at the people in power. I feel ashamed because I told you, I attended an Icelandic event where I was looking for a 62-year-old man when I told the Minister of Technology was there, and she ended up being a 29-year-old woman who was really articulate and smart. So I don't think we should have an age obsession. In
But
fact,
is that the same in Singapore, though?
I think it is the same in Singapore if you gave an opportunity for it to be the same. It's unfortunate that everyone who is in power, I'm sorry people, I'm not being ageist. I am the mother of 2 teenagers, but it is unfortunate that the people you see, there's too much of a hierarchy to climb up. And by the time you reach that place where you feel that you've earned your right to be in power and make decisions, you're ancient or fairly old, right? If you took that away and made power authority positions a democracy truly, and the smartest person or the person who's capable or the person who's won the people and earned the rights to rally everyone together, inspire people, is put in power, then we'll find that we are open to a lot younger people. And because of that, we are going to have a change in how the country is run and how we deal with the things that are happening around us. This is the age of AI. Productivity and efficiency can't be the only thing that makes good governance, because then AI would do a better job than the human. We need something that's inspiring, that gives people a purpose to follow behind you, right? And not just continuity, because the landscape has changed and continuity isn't enough.
So if I hear you right, young people today have that sensibility. They want to see change, not for the sake of change. They want to see change because it enables, and it creates possibilities.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And it's not status quo. And I've met young people who want that change, right? Now, very quickly, if you remember, when Tin Pei Ling came into the picture,
I was just
right?
I was thinking of Tin Pei Ling.
It sounds like it was a very, very different era, because she was, I think, 27. She was 27. And Nicole Chia was
24.
Was 24. They both were kind of rejected because they were so young. There was a lot of pushback from quite a lot of people. They were not, and I remember talking to young people, right? I remember talking to young people in a particular university, students. They didn't feel that they were ready. They were too young to be MPs. That was when? What year was it? 2011. So in such a short while, you're seeing a dramatic shift. That's what you're saying. Kian Boon?
I think in 2011, that was a time where tech was just starting to really pick up, right? So if you look at what people can touch, feel, see, right? They don't really see young people being head of organizations at that point in time. But as industries mature, especially in tech, right, you see younger people starting to front many of these well-known startups in tech, and people see that these companies are doing well. So that gives a bit more credence to the younger folks. And then this then translates into an impression that they can then apply on politics.
Yeah.
So, and also when you're younger, I mean, when I was young, right, I was foolish and I did many stupid things, right? So
You mean that was yesterday?
If you ask the people, if you ask people who are close to me, right, they will tell you that, right? But we keep it to the table, right? Yeah. So I think when we are younger, you tend to do certain things without thinking of the consequences. So one of the things that happened with Ting Pei Ling is that she showed off her Kate Spade bag, right? Which was a innocent gesture.
Yeah.
But someone picked up on it and it became mainstream scandal almost.
Yes.
And she was then also called up by then Mr. Goh Chok Tong and things like that.
Yeah.
And then the unfortunate thing about her is that she was then compared to Nicole Seah,
Correct.
who seemed really mature and poised.
Even though 3 years younger.
Yeah. So I think the times are a bit different now.
And it's fascinating. Would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I would say that even in 2011, Nicole Seah was a superstar at that point in time. I was super inspired by her. She's 1 year younger than me. I remember this is my politician. I still am super inspired by her. And she took on Goh Chok Tong in Marine Parade, and they almost won. No, and I thought that was amazing. So even in 2011, I thought voters knew how to differentiate. Tin Pei Ling at that point in time, who seemed so immature, seemed super not ready, whereas Nicole Seah was younger but seemed more mature. Now, I think Tin Pei Ling's story is one of the great political comebacks of the past few years. She has blossomed into a super politician.
Yeah.
But that wasn't how she started.
But some people argue that she's where she is such a mature and effective MP today because of the baptism of fire
perhaps.
of 2011. Now, moving on, let's go to another very exciting ward. It's called Punggol. You want to say why Punggol is exciting?
Well, Punggol is exciting because WP sent Harpreet there, and Harpreet is the star catch of WP. But also the rest of the WP team there I think it's quite impressive. I look at Alia, for instance.
Yes.
I'm
Alia Mata.
thinking, man, this is quite a catch for the WP, But you can say that about most of, if not all of the WP's new faces. So I think it will be the fact that the PAP sent the Deputy Prime Minister there shows that they think it's going to be hotly contested, and I think it's going to be hotly contested because of the profile. Also, it's more similar to Sengkang than anything else. It's a new GRC. I think this, so Gan Kim Yong, DPM Gan, is one of the best ministers we have. Steady hand. In terms of being a minister, no problem. But
and a good man.
A good man. Is he a vote puller? In 2020, the Choa Chu Kang GRC he got 58% plus. And that was during COVID where he was co-chair. So he had the national exposure already. So just because you're a good minister doesn't mean you'll get the votes, right?
Especially in these kind of circumstances, Of course, the plus factor is that he is he's the economics minister.
Yeah.
Right? Which means that everyone looks up to him as chairman of the task force as well. The man who holds the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Or who brings you the Holy Grail. That dimension is also interesting. Ken Boon, what do you think?
Well, so many thoughts about Punggol. Let's talk about DPM Gun. I think the choice of bringing DPM Gun there is to bolster the PAP chances there, right? Having a minister who is front and center of the US tariff negotiations, task force, and things like that. So but in my mind, right, I think this is almost like a passive-aggressive way of dealing with it. In the sense that you're telling voters that, look, this is an important minister dealing with a pertinent issue right now. Not voting for him means that you're going to lose a steady hand. I don't like that approach.
Yeah.
And also, I was reminded of what Walid said about that voters are more discerning now. And I also hear what Umar said about voters are more focused on causes rather than other things, right? So in my mind, right, I'm thinking putting that pseudo threat there in Punggol for voters who are young and more discerning, I think they're going to get quite turned off by that.
And young people don't take well to threats.
That's correct. So and
also
the other
you're not young.
She has two
You're younger.
She has two teenagers, right? So
she keeps telling us.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the other thing I also think about is that as a younger voter, right, do you really care that this person is a minister, and if I don't vote for them, then I'm going to lose a minister? I don't think that's a primary consideration. Also, more importantly, right, if a minister gets voted out, they can get replaced. We have seen this twice already, Mr. George Yeo as well as Mr. Ng Chee Meng. So what seems to be the problem? Because if the PAP's narrative is that we are capable, we have a strong civil service, we can keep things going well, losing one person will create chaos. It's just something that's very hard to connect with, right?
Yeah.
So and to me, right, on a more broader scale, right, when you position something to the electorate, you have to stick to both ends of that coin, the goods and the bad. You cannot simply always pick the good side of that story, and then when the bad comes, right, we kind of push it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
no,
if I could,
yeah, please.
yeah. So this has happened before, right, in 2020, and it was even more stark because it wasn't just the DPM that was sent to East Coast; it was the PM in waiting, and 47% of East Coast residents said no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not a sure win, this one. So I think it's very
not.
much in
But
play.
there's also another counter narrative to that, right? He's dispensable. I mean, that decision was actually made by the party.
Yeah.
Nobody forced the
Correct.
party to send
Correct.
Gan Kim Yong to the lion's den. But the fact that you were picked and sent there shows that they themselves feel that should the unforeseen happen, you go.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I was thinking too. I was thinking they must be willing to let him go in order
Yeah.
to have sent him there.
Yeah.
And to your point, I just want to add that, yes, he is the head of the task force and you feel that he's a stable hand, but it could be the opposite because up to now, he's head of the task force, but I haven't seen anything granular on what the task force is going to do to help us fix this global situation with the tariff and everything. I've heard the Prime Minister come out immediately and say, hey, this is going to be a hard time. You don't do this to a friend. We are going to have American companies leave our shores. Jobs are going to be threatened. Prices of things are going to go up. What I was hoping for this election is, I've already said all this. These are the things I'm going to do to bring about change and to fix this. Handouts alone aren't enough. I need policies that are going to bring the price down seriously and actually stop the inflation.
At a practical level, it's actually very unrealistic to expect in an election hustings for big solutions or solutions to big problems to actually be articulated. It's not.
Why?
Not yet. I feel that you can't go beyond a certain level of granularity.
Sure, but
not yet.
we always expect that of the opposition.
No, that's what I was going to say.
okay.
I was going to come to that. So the problem here is nobody has the monopoly on wisdom in a situation like this. So we all need to sit together, put our heads together, regardless of partisans' affiliations, right? But if the ruling party or the PAP says to the opposition, we expect you to have more concrete ideas and suggestions in your manifesto and everything else, and it's all flimsy stuff, the boomerang can come back and hit you. And I think that's what's happening as well.
Especially if all you're saying is trust me, trust me.
So I think to be realistic, that's why I'm saying no party is ready today. In fact, I can't think of any other country in the world outside of the USA that is ready and confident about dealing with the current problem because it's a moving target, right? Trump is a moving target. You attack here, he's going to shift position over there. So nobody has the solution, right? Now, if I may suggest, the other area, you mentioned it, Bukit Panjang. Why do you feel that Bukit Panjang is, I think for you it was number 2.
It's number 1.
Number 1.
Tampines
Why?
number 2. Just because of Paul Tambaya. I think Paul Tambaya, honestly, you look at this person.
Paul
he's
Tambaya, chairman of SDP.
Chairman of SDP. His ministerial quality, I think, world-renowned epidemiologist. So everyone who knows him likes him. And he has a personality, very funny, very witty.
And fluent in Mandarin as well.
Fluent in Mandarin as well. So I think he ticks all the boxes. And in Bukit Panjang, when he contested the first time in 2020, he got 46%. I don't see him getting lower than 46%
Against
after
Liang
5 years.
Enghua.
The same opponent.
Same opponent.
So after 5 years of getting national prominence, appearing on this podcast and that podcast, I think he will do pretty well. I wouldn't be surprised if he won.
I agree with Walid that he's very funny. Because I saw his rebuttal to Minister Ong's comments about Dr. Chee Soon-Juan abandoning Bukit Batok. Right? I thought the timing, the way he said it, I was very impressed.
He should be a stand-up comic. I actually told him that once. That you should be a stand-up comic. That should be your first career. Being a doctor should be second.
So that was my first impression. To the contest itself, I think there's a fair chance that Dr. Paul could win. So that's my general observation. But actually, when I think about this contest, I think a bit more strategically about the party itself. So Dr. Chee Soon-Juan, Dr. Paul, they're all from the Singapore Democratic Party. And if you think about that party, it's almost like the SDP is Chee Soon-Juan is SDP. So in many of their campaign kind of approach, right, it's always like they're putting forth Dr. Chee and saying that this is the face of our organization. He has suffered quite a fair bit. Let's give him a chance. Year after year, there seems to be a narrative, and he's the face of the organization. So if Dr. Paul were to win, right, and Dr. Chee doesn't, how does that then impact the dynamics of the leadership within the SDP? Because it's going to be a bit awkward, no?
I get the sense that they accept that.
Okay.
That's why it's both of them are co-leaders.
Okay, I think it's good. I think if it turns out that Dr. Chee doesn't win and Dr. Paul wins, right, and they're able to coexist as leaders together, I think it'll be great for SDP.
Yeah, but I don't think there's going to be a problem there because the level of trust between the two of them is so high.
Right.
So high, and both are fairly principled individuals. So I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think that's a big issue. But I can tell you what I'm concerned about is, you see, SDP has always projected itself as a values-driven organization, right? Now, there was an incident that happened a couple of nights ago, where one of the candidates, her name is Gijian Wong.
Yeah.
She unwittingly and being unaware perhaps, but it's difficult to forgive, she made certain comments pertaining to her teammate, Arifin Shah, right? Who is a 27-year-old, very charismatic speaker.
Very impressive.
Right, very impressive speaker. Now, in her Mandarin speech, she made a comment about, in fact, she referred to him as elephant because she could not pronounce Arifin, elephant. And I remember watching that video clip about 6 times. Is this real? Is this real? Can't believe it. And then she went on to use the term kilengkia, and we know that the word kilengkia is often pejorative, in the way it's received.
It's always pejorative.
Yeah. So even though you may not intend it, to use it is a problem. Now, the good thing about SDP is the leadership of SDP came in immediately to chastise and say this is wrong, what she did is absolutely unacceptable. All the good things in crisis management was done. But I'm not sure whether it has taken away the sting, taken away the pain, the hurt, the anger that it may have generated. I'm not sure, I suspect not. And I do suspect that it would have an effect on especially Chee Soon-Juan, Chee Soon-Juan's battle in Sembawang West. What do you all think?
No, definitely. I think because they present themselves as the credible party, and
values-driven.
Yeah, and values-driven, and then publicly they lost that. Feels like sibling rivalry was happening in national TV, or social media.
Yeah. I do think I saw Arifin's response to it. I thought it was a really good response.
Yeah.
I just have one quibble with Arifin's response. I think anytime a person uses the phrase, and
would you want to share what the response was?
So his response was he was saying no racism is casual, so agreed. So it's bad. He said intent doesn't matter. So this is my quibble with him. So we all know, right? And there are very few things that really, really gets me as much as when somebody uses the word keling. Right? Any Indian, just instinctively you feel that. Right? But I have to say the intent does matter. It doesn't excuse. It's still completely unacceptable. but the intent does matter. And she was actually trying to praise Arifin. This teammate of mine, he's as charismatic as Pritam Singh. He was saying this Indian, right? So he was in the praise, like she was trying to do that, and that's very different from somebody saying, "Hey, look at that Kaling here,"
And she said it openly, which means she's accountable for what she said.
So it's still unacceptable. It's still unacceptable, and it's even more unacceptable because you are running for parliament. You are not the coffee shop uncle, auntie. It's and whenever we hear this, right, it just brings up so much pain and hurt because we all hear, "Hey, don't do the Apu Nene will come and catch you." All these things. It just reminds you that it's ever present in society.
I'm still looking for Apu Nene.
Okay, what is an Apu Nene? I don't know this.
we shall talk about Apu Nene later.
It's best not to talk now.
Yeah, best not to talk now.
Okay,
no, we are Indians. We can.
You can't. We can.
Actually, I have some thoughts on this. Actually, I think what this unfortunate incident with the SDP, I think it hurt the opposition in general. And the reason I say this is because, right, one of the criticism leveled on the opposition is that they are unable to build a proper pipeline of good candidates. And of course, this is amplified by the fact that the Workers' Party had Ms. Nicosia and Mr. Leon Pereira, do what they did, right, in their first election kind of a cycle, right? So by having something like this happen with the SDP, which is another credible party, people are going to be thinking, I think our alternative parties still cannot get their HR issues in order. They're still unable to attract the right kind of people. And what seems to be happening is that they're able to attract ad hoc superstars here and there, but for them to be able to build a pipeline of good people seems to be lacking.
Well, I see your point, but I don't quite agree with that because I think all the parties, all the major parties have had these issues. Probably with the exception of PSP, PAP has had these issues, So, but I think people are not taking it that seriously. I mean, I do feel that people are willing to forgive. Maybe not forget, but forgive and say, okay, move on. If you apologize, there's an apology, but it will take time for you to get over it. That's my concern. My point is, this election, I think they will pay a price.
Yeah. So I don't know about the point of people, Singaporeans, looking at the opposition as a monolith. I don't think that is true. I think Singaporeans do differentiate between the opposition. And you mentioned Leon and Nicole. Will people remember Cheng Li Hui and Tan Chuan Jin or Iswaran? So if that's the case, it sort of balances things out. In fact, it hurts the PAP more if you look at the number of issues, right? But I think at the end of the day, when people compare the opposition, they will look at Workers' Party as a tier 1 opposition party, and then PSP and SDP as tier 2, and then the rest. So I think people are able to differentiate. If we use that, then Goh Meng Seng is an anti-vaxxer. Does that affect the WP? Surely not, right?
Yeah, actually, after hearing the thoughts, right, I think if it's not systemic, I think it is something that can be overlooked. And I think the point that Walid brought up, I think is a good one. I think in Singapore, there's a tiering system of opposition, and WP is branded. The rest slightly less branded. So if you think along those kind of lines, right, then there is that differentiation that then buffers from this sort of a one-off event.
But hurts the SDP for sure. Hurts the SDP for
this
sure.
This election, it's hard to recover from it immediately. But I do feel that society as a whole is not taking is moving away from taking these things so seriously. It's private, it's your personal life, move on. I'm hearing that more and more, not just from younger people, but even older people who say, look, what happens in your private life, move on, So sensibilities are shifting, okay? But when something like this happens, so strong, as you said, you can't intend, this is besides that, but wrong is wrong, Now, very quickly, because we have another 15 minutes for the discussion, let's go to Choa Chu Kang, GRC. It's a very interesting thing, right? Just to give context, DPM Gan Kim Yong was there, pretty solid, entrenched for several elections, and then abruptly gets thrown out, and he then flies all the way to Punggol. People in Punggol don't know who he is. And then another guy from Marine Parade flies in and overnight becomes the champion of Choa Chu Kang. So that's I've often wonder how the residents feel, how unimportant they feel in this game of cards. How unimportant. Because it does strike me as a game of cards. If I'm there, I would feel that way. How do you feel? How do you think it'll pan out?
Maybe start with the numbers. Because if I remember it correctly, in the past 3 elections, the competition has not been very steep.
Yeah.
Right. I think in 2011, 2015, it was the smaller parties. I think the winning margin by the PAP is around
59?
Yeah, around 60 to 70, give or take, right? So, and that was the result. But the moment the more credible party came in GE 2020 in the form of PSP, that number was 58%. So that tells me that the win rate of PAP in Choa Chu Kang is not really real because they have not really faced a good team there, right?
Yeah. And the PSP team of 4 has at least 2 people who have been profiled quite well. Lawrence, Peck, and Wendy.
Yeah, that's correct.
They're both pretty strong, sensible. So that is another dimension as well, which didn't happen in the 2020 election.
Yeah, that's correct.
Agreed. I think the PSP Choa Chu Kang team this time around is a bit stronger than the 2020. But I still think it's a long shot. I think 8% to make up that only a 9% swing. I think it's quite hard.
Well, since you say that, let's move on.
Okay.
Okay, now we have the last 2 that I want to talk about, and feel free to bring up others. West Coast. Now, West Coast GRC 2020 and now, the PSP has put all 3 of their top leaders there. That's very bold. Okay. Now, in 2020, the margin, the difference between the winning and losing team was 3.8%. It's really small, And do you feel that the margin has a much better chance of shrinking further?
I think there's a chance. Now, why I'm hesitating, because there's 41,000 new residents, voters
from Jurong West.
And Jurong West was a PAP stronghold. Although I'll put a caveat, right? That Jurong West, Jurong GRC, the PAP used to win 70%. How sure are we that 70% is for Taman versus it is for the PAP? So that 41,000, it will affect, but is it offset by the Tan Cheng Bock factor? Especially, it says that he's guilt-tripping the residents there. This is my last election. And PSP is no longer a Tan Cheng Bock party. I would argue in some ways it's the Leong Man Wai party. So Leong Man Wai, I think, has become more prominent since then.
It's the beacon.
Hazel Pua has become more prominent since then as well. So I do think that the West Coast team, even though the 3 are the same, the 3 leaders are there. The 3 leaders have gotten stronger in that sense.
But in a different way, right? With Hazel Pua and Leong Man Wai, it's more substance.
Correct.
Solid, because a lot of, regardless of whether you agree with them or not, it's just the dint. They're there, they put the flag in the sand and say, this is what we believe in, Whereas with Tan Cheng Bock, I think it's very much to do with being MP, a very much loved MP of Ayer Rajah for several decades. And the people who used to vote for him and who grew up watching him as MP are still voters today.
Yes.
In that area, and they have influence over their family members, their grandchildren who are probably voting age today. So the emotional factor, we shouldn't underplay it.
I agree, and especially that's a secure vote bank for the PAP usually, the elderly, but because he was from the PAP, there could be. And also, and I think that the PAP team has actually gotten a bit weaker because Iswaran has left.
Yeah.
Now, I do think Dr. Hamid Razak, the one who came in, he seems like a pretty solid candidate.
Solid.
Yeah, so...
And not to mention I mean, Desmond Lee.
Desmond Lee is, I would say, one of the better ministers, one of the best we have. But he was also there in 2020, right? But his profile has raised as well. So I do think it's going to be close. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I wouldn't touch this GRC because it's going to be close.
Can I just speak to that? Like, what just happened as well? Desmond Lee got challenged to a debate, and he came back and he asked, and he asked for what are your local policies, and he was told, I think Man Wai came back and said, I am not an estate, opposition's job is not estate management. We are here to make policies and argue policies at Parliament, which I felt was a bit of a slap on the face for residents, because what are you saying? You're not there to take care of things. And I actually wrote this down because immediately after I saw that, right, someone on Reddit who claimed to be a Tharman Jurong resident said that since Tharman has left, his neighborhood has become a slum.
Wow.
So that was on Reddit.
Back to your point, right?
Yeah. Which means this is what people care about. And if you're saying that this is not what I'm looking at right now, we want you to fix those policies. We want you to be arguing them and taking care of the people at a bigger level, but you got to fix the grounds as well.
Are you saying that Man Wai
scored an own goal?
Yeah, he scored an own goal. That's basically it. Yeah.
Actually, when I think about this particular contest, one thing I thought that the PSP did was very smart, right? Is that the Workers' Party and PAP are playing up the whole abandonment issue.
Yeah.
Who abandoned who last minute or otherwise, right? PSP approach was quite clever. They said that the reason why 3 of our superstars are there, we thought about it and we did it because we want to be committed to the residents. So that's why we did this.
So they are playing up to that, and we are not them.
Yeah. So
we are not people who abandon you. We stick together.
So to me, right, this is in this election, there's a lot of negative messaging across the different parties, but the PSP has stuck largely to a positive story, as far as I can remember, positive to neutral. And I think this approach is going to play well for them, especially when the difference is only 3.8%, right?
Yeah. Small
little things will matter. And even Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, he's also kind of talking about like he might retire after this election, a bit of nostalgia there. So, a couple percent here and there, everything will help. And on Mr. Desmond Lee, right, I think there's quite a number of people that think he's a solid minister. But at the same time, there's also those that detract from that. They think that he has not done a good job with housing and things like that. So those votes, I don't know which is a stronger force here, but that's going to play out a little bit also, I think.
But I guess we agreed that it's a hotbed.
Yeah, it's definitely a hotbed. Yeah.
And I feel for them, for the 3 of them, because, I mean, imagine the prospect of all 3 of them being out.
That's the end of the party.
Yeah, that's the end of the party. Yeah. So I admire their guts. I admire the timber that they have to actually go in for broke, so to speak. The last one, my constituency, East Coast GRC,
Mine too.
And I mean, a lot of people were waiting for the East Coast plan, but I don't think the East Coast plan is going to materialize. But what do you think of Edwin Tong coming in?
Yeah, I think East Coast is not going to be in play, unfortunately, because the WP didn't send the big names there. I think there were a lot of rumors, some of it started by myself, that Pritam was going to go to East Coast on nomination day, and with Harpreet as well. But I guess those were just aspirations rather than actual predictions. So, looking at the East Coast team, they do have Jenjong, JJ. I think he's a solid guy. The rest are solid people as well. Just that they are very new.
And the profile is not strong.
The profile is not as strong. So I don't think it is that much in play.
Sure, I agree. I don't think it'll be in play at all. Yeah. I think,
Yeah, all I see are posters of Edwin everywhere. Dog walks, Christmas, Chinese New Year.
But it's a good team. I must say it's a tested team. And then
the East Coast
team, the PAP East Coast team is a good team, and many people in East Coast are actually looking forward to it. And I agree with you. The general sense is it was intentional, I think, on the part of WP. You can't fight on so many fronts.
Yeah.
So they've decided to choose the battles and this is the way it is. And I'm sure Jen Jong knows it, but he'll put up a good fight.
Yeah, yeah.
And now we have a couple of minutes left, and I want to ask you all. Let's have some fun. Each one of you, name one superstar. We know who your superstar is, but say it anyway.
Okay, I like Harfred because he's very charismatic. And when he stands up to speak, he has presence and he gives a sense of hope. You're so used to elections in Singapore where everything is so calculated, every word is so controlled and contained and rehearsed. And he delivers it with a lot more charisma, and there's a bit of spontaneity about the way he delivers, which is nice.
Yeah.
It inspires you and it gives you a sense of hope. You know, just to go and watch him speak is quite inspiring. I know one-to-one he might not be as charismatic, but when he stands on stage and he speaks,
No,
it
even
really gives
one-to-one,
you-
he's the same person.
Yeah.
You know, but one of the criticisms leveled against him is, you know, it's in very broad strokes about principles and so on, and people are challenging him and say, what about some of the concrete ideas, the usual stuff, you know? Do you think that is valid?
Okay,
Expecting
so
him to talk in concrete terms?
I'm going to talk about it from like advertising because I run an ad agency and advertising is the world I come from. I think you need the big idea to inspire people. And then you need to support it with what we call the RTBs, the reasons to believe.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think that one man in the party needs to solve everything. A smart head of a party or co-head of a party actually gets people to support him on the RTBs. He just needs the people to surround him who are able to do that.
Yeah.
Because not everyone can be the inspiring one and the one who comes up with all the little nitty-gritties, right?
Yeah. Kianpun?
Actually, I didn't really have a standout, but I like Harpreet for what he represents. Because I think one of the things over the years is that there are some criticism of the PAP that some of the people at the top, key appointment holders, may be a bit aloof and distant from the electorate. And for Harpreet being so accomplished as he is, right, when I look at the way he speaks at podcasts and at rallies, he seems to be a man of the people, despite achieving so much. I think that personification of that, I think it's quite good. I think it's very good. It shows that, okay, you can be successful, you can be humble, you can bring something to the table. And also for him, I think having accomplished so much, he doesn't really need to do this. I think he talked about it actually.
Yeah.
He could just go and do something fun instead of doing all of this, but he chose to do this. So for that, right, I respect him. Yeah.
Besides Harpreet, is there anyone else?
Yeah, stop stealing mine. Be
Give
original.
him a chance.
I hate to take sides when it comes to this, but okay, I'll talk about those that I've talked to.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I like and don't like.
It's got to be very fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. From PAP, I met Mr. Dinesh Dash from East Coast. What I really liked about him is that when he came for an interview with me, he did not come here with this is the questions that I approve and this is what you can ask. And he did not even ask to vet through the answers, and he just said, go ahead, publish it. You don't need to get my approval. I like that because this is a deviation from what you think about PAP as a party. And I also interviewed Jackson Au from the Workers' Party. He's very young. But what I found him to be, he's articulate about the issues. Not perfect, of course, but he knows what's happening on the ground. And he has put himself out there to take all the pain of politics and try to make a difference. So I respect that.
Great.
Dr. Syed Harun from PAP. I have no doubts he'll be a minister one day. If the PAP is still government in 5-10 years, and they will. So I have no doubts. So Eileen from the Workers' Party, I think she's really good. And Arifin from SDP. But I don't know whether this incident will affect his
regardless.
to the SDP.
Regardless,
Whether he will stay in the SDP. But as a candidate, you look at him.
At 27.
My goodness, he's
Maturity.
amazing.
Maturity.
The charisma you talk about. Harpreet is 59. This boy is 27.
27.
And it's really amazing.
Yeah. I've got a list of a few people. I'm very impressed with Marshall Lim from the PAP. You know, even though the chances of him winning Hougang are very, very slim, but valiant, you know. My star candidate for PAP is Jasmine Lau, you know, former Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Health, you know. She's got an X factor in her sincerity. She comes across highly knowledgeable without flaunting it. when you listen to her, I feel very absorbed by what she's saying, simply because she doesn't give herself great importance. So I like her. Dinesh is great. Hazlina is quite charismatic. She's got a good smile. Also, Dr. Hamid Raza, the orthopedic surgeon. There's a certain quiet confidence that he projects. Tremendous amount of care for individuals that doctors are losing these days. And Go Hanyan in Nisun. And then for Workers' Party, Andre Lo, Jalan Kayu, Harpreet, of course. I like Alexis. I think there's a certain calmness, confidence that she projects. And Michael Ting. He's I think up there. Probably on par with Harpreet.
Wow.
Yeah, probably. I think so. In a very different way. He's himself. PSP, Stephanie Tan,
Who did very well yesterday.
Yeah,
in
very
the round
well.
table,
Very well, And she held her own, And Lawrence Beck. And SDP, Arifin Shah, and Suraya Akbar. Again. So it's very interesting because we've got one of the best slates of candidates, PAP as well as the opposition. And I'm just so delighted, I'm just so delighted, having been involved in elections in Singapore since 1984, before you were born. It's amazing to be able to see that today you have so many people entering the fray and saying, I want to contribute. This is a Singapore that I'm tremendously proud of. And I'm reminded of my favorite quote from Albert Einstein. Great spirits have always inspired violent opposition from mediocre minds. Now, these are certainly not mediocre minds. Let them soar as great spirits. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.